Morning glory and evening grace, Americans. Hugh Hewitt, joined now by Florida Senator Marco Rubio. Senator Rubio, welcome back. Always a pleasure to speak with you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me back.
Some of your Senate Democratic colleagues have figured out that Obamacare is a disaster, and they want to fix it with some patches. Should Senate Republicans help Senators Landrieu, Pryor, and Hagan save their seats by signing on to a short-term fix?
I don't think their solutions are even a short-term fix. I think what's becoming apparent every day, increasingly and tragically in the lives of many Americans, is the impact this is having on real people and how this bill really can't be saved. I mean, at the end of the day, the system was never going to work, and it's certainly not going to work now. And our biggest regret at this point needs to be how disruptive this is to the American economy and to the aspirations of people that are just trying to get ahead.
Senator Landrieu just said on CNN earlier this afternoon, quote, "I have absolutely nothing to be defensive about." Do you agree with that?
Well, I don't. I mean, I think anyone who voted for it and has supported it ever since has a lot to answer for. It was always known from the beginning the resistance to this was not a resistance to allowing more people to have health insurance. I think that's the ideal. I think the problem is that their solution to every problem, from health insurance to the weather, is some massive federal government intervention into our economy. And that's exactly what Obamacare is. It's a massive intervention into something that represents about a sixth of our total economy and impacts every single American. So you have millions and millions of people who had health insurance that they were happy with, and in an effort to help those who do not have health insurance, they've basically negatively impacted everyone.
Now, this is a tough problem, because these same Democratic senators who want to do a fix, they were part of the No Negotiations Extremism Caucus just 6 weeks ago. Can Republicans sit back and say no negotiations, or do they have to follow sort of Ron Johnson into the room and try and resurrect something here?
Well, look, we get calls and emails every day from people that are being badly hurt by this. And if there's something we can do to help them in the short term, we should explore that. But by no means should we be exploring ways to try to fix this law, because it's not fixable. It's basically like trying to run to the Titanic and trying to plug holes with crazy glue. I mean, you're not going to be able to do it. This is just taking on way too much water. This program was never designed to work. From the very beginning, it was never going to work. And I'm starting to get the sense that perhaps all of this is now just a big excuse to come back at some point and say, you see, this is why we need a single-payer system, which some Democrats actually either secretly want and some of them openly want.
Now, Bill Clinton even took a shot yesterday. I want to play for you, Senator Rubio, what the former president had to say yesterday, listening very closely to the way he's using it to pivot towards 2016.
Third problem is for young people mostly, but not all young, who are in the individual market whose incomes are above 400% of the poverty level. They were the ones who heard the promise, if you like what you got, you can keep it.
Now, Senator Rubio, young people, but not just young people, and he said they're the ones who heard that promise. The promise, of course, is...
Here's a guarantee that I've made. If you have insurance that you like, then you will be able to keep that insurance.
It wasn't just young people or almost only young people. Everybody heard that promise, didn't they?
Everyone did, because he said it to everyone, and he said it repeatedly. It was, I think if he had said to people that under this law, if you have insurance that you're happy with, you probably won't get to keep it, because we're going to make everyone get a certain kind of insurance, it never would have passed. It just would not have passed. Even Democrats would have peeled off. But either they chose to believe that or they chose to look the other way, and now it's the law, and it's hurting people very badly. And as far as separating himself and creating space for Secretary Clinton on this issue, I think it's hard. We can't forget that she was the original author of Hillary Care back in, I believe, 1993, and that would have been a disaster as well. They're equal believers in this notion that the government is the only solution to our problems, including on health insurance.
I think former Secretary of State Clinton is Obamacare's grandmother. I think that's how she ought to be known, and I don't think she can, or do you seriously think she can expect not to be linked with this fiasco?
No, of course not. I think clearly she has a history of being in favor of the kind of big government intervention into health insurance that is kind of the underpinning of this long-term desire that many on the left have had for a universal payer, for one insurance for every American, Medicare for all type concept, which I think is, of course, would never work and is a disaster for the middle class and for the American dream.
Now, on Monday, you wrote in the Miami Herald, it's a very good piece, I linked it over to HughHewitt.com, that the Navigators program is a recipe for fraud. Now, James James, what's his last name? O'Keefe has put out a new video, one of his investigative videos, showing that navigators, the real navigators, are actually encouraging people to cheat, not declare their income. And you're right, the fake navigators are going to be a problem out there. Has anyone responded to your concern that this is fraught with future illegality?
No. In fact, within minutes of introducing a bill to address this issue, the Democratic National Committee was attacking it, saying, all sorts of ridiculous things, comparing it to background checks for guns, et cetera. Look, here's the problem. You're going to have illegitimate people that aren't even navigators at all pretending to be and getting people's personal information, but you're also going to have unscrupulous people that will be allowed to go in and work as navigators out there signing people up as well, and that you're going to encounter some of those problems that you just highlighted.
Last time you were on, last month, you stunned me when you told me, I just learned it from you, that the Spanish website wasn't up yet. Your Miami Herald column confirms it's still not up. Among Spanish-speaking Americans, isn't this an insult? Are they outraged that they're not even in line yet for the disaster?
It's interesting. I don't know the answer that people are outraged. Some polling shows that in the Hispanic community there's more support for this than there is among the general population. I think a lot of that just has to do with some of the promises that were made in terms of what this was and what this was going to be. I think that number will decline rapidly here over the next few weeks if it hasn't already, because of the dysfunction. I think there are Americans of Hispanic descent that have health insurance they're happy with. They're going to lose it. I know in my home state of Florida there are Americans of Hispanic descent that are on Medicare Advantage who are going to begin to see their benefits under that program begin to be reduced. So I think this law is going to become universally unpopular because it's now transitioning from simply a concept, a law that passed 3-4 years ago, to a reality that's now impacting real people in real ways.
Now, only 80,000 people signed up with the state exchanges. I mean, that's just a Browns game attendance. 26,794 signed up for the healthcare.gov, and that's a good-sized crowd at a Cavs game. These are absurd numbers, Senator Rubio. Do they show any sign? Do you have any confidence that this will accelerate to anything like the level they need to make the death spiral, the adverse selection death spiral, not what actually happens?
Well, I don't. I believe they won't. People will not sign up for this for reasons that we've been outlining for months, but it's worse than that. It's not just the people signing up. Among the people signing up, the pool of people signing up are just not the right mix for insurers. As a result, you're going to see skyrocketing premiums, which is going to make even some of those folks decide not to stay on and others not to sign up at all. I mean, the sticker shock is going to be real. Even with these subsidies they keep promising people, the cost for many people is going to be prohibitive. And one of the reasons why is because you're forcing people to buy a package of insurance that the government has decided is good for them. They've completely taken away the power of individuals to have the flexibility to buy not just coverage that's affordable, but the kind of coverage that they want, that features the things they need and doesn't force them to pay for parts of insurance that they do not need.
Ovik Roy said on this program yesterday the average cost is going to be 40% higher for the average American. That's across all states, all age groups. Is that roughly what you're hearing in Florida?
It is, and I've heard estimates that are a bit higher as well. And look, I think that what you're going to see now is that this law was promised to people as something that's going to make insurance available for everyone. The problem is that while there will be a handful of people that will be able to get insurance and perhaps feel like they're better off, the vast majority of Americans will not be. And that includes Americans, over 70%, who currently receive health insurance benefits through their employer. They're going to find that either is no longer offered or that the premiums under the plans they once had are significantly higher. And I think that's going to lead to an all-out political rebellion in this country where people are really going to say, enough is enough. We want this thing repealed. In the day at the end of the government shutdown, I predicted this. I went on television that night and I said, this law can't stand because people, when they find out what it is doing to them, they will demand that it be repealed. I still believe that very strongly. I think we're just a few months away from really beginning to see this hit critical mass as more and more people are impacted by it.
Now, I saw you over at the Supreme Court last week for the town of Greece argument. And, of course, religious freedom is going to be back up before the Supreme Court very, very soon in the HHS regs. How important is the issue of individual religious liberty going to be over the next 3 years?
I think it'll be very important. It's always been important. It's a core constitutional principle, one of the things that sets this country apart from many other countries in the world. And that case that you were talking about was about legislative prayer, people arguing that even that before a meeting is convened, trained legislatures like town councils can't have a moment of prayer. And again, we never know with the Supreme Court, but I'm fairly confident that the ruling there is going to be positive in favor of that fundamental religious right to pray before a political body assembles.
Last question. I know you're a hardcore Dolphins fan. How tough is this for you?
It's very tough. It's the most difficult time in the franchise's history, probably at this stage, and I think it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. But luckily they play every year. So
okay, so you can give up a season.
That's about as good as I can say. Right?
Okay, Senator Marco Rubio from Florida. As a Browns fan, my heart doesn't go out to you because you beat us in the opener. Nevertheless, there's always next year. We know how to say that in Cleveland. Be well. Thanks for joining us. I'll be right back. America, don't go anywhere. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.